Welcome back, Ala. This is your sixth solo show at the gallery. The last one was in 2018, Safina. And here we are today for The Sky of the Seven Valleys.
It's great to be here.
Good to have you
Thanks
back.
for having me.
So, many things have changed since our last solo show, 2018, so pre-COVID. And here we are today with this incredible suite of paintings that are a continuation of, they are the Zenith paintings, which started, I think the first time was Nowheresville.
Yeah, it's almost been 10 years, I think.
Right.
Almost, yeah.
So it's been 10 years that you've been doing these Zenith paintings. And this show is basically, the way that you thought about it was as one complete set of paintings made specifically for the space. So can we talk a little bit about basically the process of making the works, but also how this show came about?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the last show we did was Safina, and it was this kind of it was referencing the book and this idea of this essentially the small manuscript that travels with oneself, and it's a compendium of texts from different centuries, from poetry to potentially astronomy to math to whatever it might be. But it's an anthology of text, oftentimes poetry.
Books that you collect as well. I mean, this is important in
it was part of it, but I think the Safina was a tradition of essentially a genre of books that were a compendium of literature that were meant to travel with you. Oftentimes they were small, and they would open from the smaller end of the book, so they're almost like they're pocket size, and they're texts that are kind of separated, oftentimes centuries apart. But it was that show that I was starting to work with night exposures for the first time.
Right.
And for that exhibition, it was a lot more of a humble scale, if you will. Book pages, bound book pages that were treated and essentially brought out under either moonlight or starlight. So I had Nightfall, which was working with starlight, and then there was 36 Views of the Moon, which was essentially following the moon phases and working with moonlight to expose and print these works. Right. This is the first, essentially, this scale of works to be working with night exposures, and it took a whole year, just to,
So we were talking about how the Zenith paintings, over the last 10 years, I think you've made 30 of them, or
maybe.
Not, maybe less. Maybe less. Yeah. So they do really take. They really are durational works that take time, and they're not, something that you can easily make. You have to really plan and prepare, and also to, of course, like to see the right evening or the right, moon phase.
Weather conditions.
The weather conditions. If it's a full moon or not a full moon, right? So that affects what you see on the surfaces. So maybe talking a little bit about the cyanotypes, because the Zenith paintings are the first layer of it is a cyanotype, and just a little bit about how, these are exposed to sunlight, starlight, and moonlight.
That's right.
And our last show was more just night exposure, so starlight and moonlight.
Exactly.
So so it took you a year and a half, I think, to finish this show. So so a little bit about maybe the cyanotype part, and also what is the image that's being exposed onto the first layer of these paintings.
For sure. Yeah, I've been long interested in this idea of light and how a work not only can represent light, but how can it embody light? How, and these are essentially works birthed by light, right? So cyanotype and other cameraless kind of photographic processes I've been quite interested in. But the cyanotype is something that I've kind of kind of keep going back to. Just that, you know, just the colors that come out, and the ability to work with different UV lights, and as you mentioned, whether it's, you know, moonlight or sunlight. So I think for this, you know, particular, you know, body of work, I kind of envisioned what I was hoping it would do. You know, I had kind of laid it out in my head, and even in previous Zenith works, which are oftentimes quadriptychs, I do think about these different time scales. So, and what I mean by that is that oftentimes in the quadriptychs, I would kind of have each panel printed under the sunlight of a different season. And so they kind of embody a year worth of light. This is something that I was still thinking with this work. Like, how can this work, essentially, this work that we're looking at, sitting in right now, embody a year of light? So it was, you know, this, you know, kind of breaking it into these processes, I guess, kind of figuring out how many panels, how many works, how many, you know, canvases are needed, and then just kind of working away. And I guess the first part of that process is kind of going through archives of images. And you know, now there's also the James Webb. But when I started working with this, really it was just the, you know, the Hubble telescope images. And
you the Hubble telescope, so the image that is on the background of the paint, I mean, the image that's exposed onto, not the background, the actual image that's exposed onto the canvas here. This is it a specific image from a specific time? Because I know, because time is very important. I mean, light is extremely important in your works, but I think time is as important. So
absolutely, I think that's what I was referring to as these different time scales. On kind of one facet or one kind of layer, if you will, I'm exploring these works, this idea of kind of a year of light. That's kind of has birthed these works. But the images that are from the telescope are actually billions of years old.
Wow.
In the sense that they represent billions of years of cosmic history.
Amazing.
This particular one is it's almost 12 billion years, and
12 billion years
and there's
of time.
And there's 7,500 galaxies that's in this, and they're deep sky survey images. And I think another interesting aspect of how these deep sky survey kind of images are, I guess, captured is they're these kind of patches of the sky that with the naked eye are just black. You know, it almost seems like negative, a void. But you know, it's almost like when you open up the exposure, I mean the shutter, and you allow for light to just continuously absorb, and things start to kind of appear. It's very similar in the same respect. So so it's that many years represented. So you have these different time scales that are right.
The 12 billion years, and then you have the 1 year that it took you to make it, and then upon, you know, this kind of this very kind of physical, in some ways they're quite physical, because there's they're quite big, so they're, you know, it's bringing them in and out of the dark room, and then washing them. Once they're treated with this, you know, this light sensitive solution, essentially, they are they're in the dark room. They just dry for several days. Okay.
And then I stretch them out and lay that photographic negative over it, and sheet of glass, and they come out. And they come out.
And you have to be careful not to expose them to light, of course,
exactly.
at that time. Like
everything's close.
Because it's very sensitive
material.
So,
exactly. So if it's a daytime exposure, you know, there's a black tarp over this as it comes out, and it's like once it's set and we kind of have the right kind of configuration, and it's unveiled. And I think for me, just like as seeing an object and thinking about like process, this idea of an object touching the ground, you know, touching the soil, but literally facing the sky, and slowly this kind of mirroring happens. There's a kind of metaphor there as well, and slowly this thing starts to develop and print itself, I guess. And once it's the right time, you bring it back in and you wash it.
Right.
In the dark. You wash it in the dark.
Right.
And in that process, the cyans fully kind of reveal themselves.
Wow.
It is a kind of a, it feels almost like it's alchemy, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And it dries for several days, and then I kind of go through them, and the ones that feel right, we kind of stretch. I usually do. I try to do 1 or 2 at a time.
Okay.
Can't do more.
Yeah.
But
well, they need space as well, but also
need space.
Yeah.
Then I think, especially for night exposures, you really have to babysit them overnight. It's
really?
Not, yeah. And if it's a moon exposure, you have to also make sure that it's actually, the moon is in the right. Everything is not changing, right, over the course
right.
of.
Or that it's not cloudy, or does that
absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
yeah, absolutely.
And you said humidity can also.
Everything can, absolutely.
Right. So it's
all
that
makes
sensitive,
yeah,
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
does it mean, so when do you know when it's ready? Because you could, if it's a night exposure, okay, maybe it's just from dusk till dawn.
Yeah.
But then the daytime exposures, you could.
I usually try to have a specific time for each, for the daytime ones.
Okay.
That don't usually exceed 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The nighttime ones, there's something which I find, I don't know, maybe there's this idea of just, I put them out about 2 hours after sunset, and they're brought in right before sunrise.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a bit of a sort of a ritual in the making of the work as well, I would say, which is also what I wanted to talk about. The title of the show is The Sky of the Seven Valleys, and this refers to the poet by Faridin al-Attar, 12th century Persian poet, philosopher, that the specific poem being The Conference of the Birds, and basically the 7 valleys that they have to cross over to arrive. So, a little bit maybe about how this poem and why this poem was important to you.
This is the text that I think I just really have appreciated for probably 2 decades.
Yeah.
Kind of always interested me.
Right.
So the story essentially is why I know you know, but
but it's good. It's it's good for people who don't know to know the story of the Conference of the Birds. Yeah.
But it's
in brief.
But I think the relevance.
Yeah.
And I think of this moment is that it's a dark time, right? It's a dark time. It's a moment of uncertainty, and there's
very dark. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's this hope that that by all these birds coming together and taking this journey to find Simor, who is the mother of all birds, the phoenix of the east, that she will restore justice and bring light and hope to this moment. So I found a lot of relevance there, and so these thousands of birds that gather know that Simor her home is in the 7th valley. In that valley.
On the 7th valley,
okay,
right.
There's Mount Qaf there, she's there. They know they have to embark on this journey, and they embark on this journey, and each valley they go, some of them get stuck, some of them just don't make it to the next valley,
one,
right?
So do the birds ever meet Simor?
Do they ever meet? I think they do. I think they do. I think they reach this, the ones that reach the 7th valley, look all over for Seymour, and I think they can't find Seymour, but they look down.
Right.
And they see a reflection in this lake of themselves. And what is left of these thousands of birds are 30 birds.
Amazing.
Which in Persian, Seymour deconstructed is 30
30
birds.
birds.
So this idea of
I love it.
they do find
Yeah.
Seymour, right?